Ladies and gentlemen, I should like to introduce to you a man whose great learning and veneration for truth and scientifical accuracy are exceeded only by his high moral character and majestic presence. I'm speaking in these vague and general terms, of course, of myself. I deplore introductions, but if it is the custom to have them, I prefer to do the act myself so as I can rely on getting in all the facts. I was born modest, but only in spots. I mean, after all, what is an introduction but a string of compliments made by somebody who don't know anything about you? Although the best introduction I ever did have was from the chief of a Nevada silver mine operation one evening in the camps. He was one of these fellas that kept his boots stuffed in with his pant tops when he spoke. He says, "Now, boys, we got with us here Mark Twain. I only know two things about him. First off, he ain't never been to the penitentiary. Second off, I don't know why not." Well, I don't either. I went out to the Silver Land with my brother Orion, intent on making my fortune. But apparently the other people had got there and picked up the silver, which was for the taking off the very ground before I reached it. I made my fortune all the same, though. It was a fortune in stories. For all the nations of the world had sent their wildest dreamers to the Silver Land, and when they spoke, it was well worth listening to. So tonight, with the help of my young friends, we're going to recount some of those stories for you. They come from a time long ago when the dreams of the whole human race were filled with thoughts of perfection, opulence, and plenty. We had not been beaten down by government yet, and what little government we had was not nearly as clever as the ones we have today, and so was effectively harmless. In those times, a man could dream, and those dreams could become stories. But it's not to say that all the people in the Silver Land could tell a story. Some had difficulties.
Have you ever heard a man tell a story and you could feel to your bones that he couldn't remember all there was to tell? Well, if that was a disappointment, imagine one who remembers everything, whether it's important or not. There was one such man in the mining camps in the old days, whose grandfather had an old ram. Some said that the story was worth listening to, but none of them had ever heard it fully.
Because the old man, you see, had a memory that was nearly perfect in every detail, and each remembered detail or fact was an obstacle in his attempt to march straight through to the end. It would send him off in a new direction, and he would lose the thread of his narrative. But one day, word came from the boys that the old man was taking his seat by the pot-bellied stove and was sure this time to finish the story. We all gathered round at the general store, and we sat and we listened with reverent
and hopeful silence.
Well, as I was a-saying, he bought that old ram from a fella up in Siskiyou County, brought him home, and set him loose in the meadow. Next morning, he went down there to have a look at him and dropped a 10-cent piece of grass and stooped down and was fumbling in the grass trying to get it. Well, that ram, he was up there on the slope taking notice, but my grandfather wasn't taking notice, for he had his back to the ram and was interested in the dime. So, as I was saying, my grandfather, he was stooping so in the grass, trying to get the dime, and the ram, he was up there on the slope, and Smith was right there. No, not just there, a little further away, 15 foot perhaps. So there he was, my grandfather stooping so, and the ram on the slope, and Smithy, the ram, he bent his head down, and my grandfather, he was stooping, trying to get the dime, and it was Smith of Calaveras County that was. No, it couldn't have been Smith of Calaveras. I remember now that he'd been dead for. But George, it was Smith of Tulare County. I remember now, perfect plain. Well, there we were, my grandfather stooping so, and the ram up at the slope taking notice, and here he come, down the slope, 30 miles an hour with an eye full of business. Well, my grandfather with his back to him, and oh my, it wasn't Smith of Tulare at all. It was Smith of Sacramento. Land, how did I get my Smiths mixed up like that? Smith of Tulare was just a nobody, but Smith of Sacramento, let me just tell you this. One of them married a Whitaker. I reckon that gives you an idea of the kind of society they associate around them.
What about
the ram? Get back to the ram.
Marry your Whitaker. Now, there's a girl for you, small, why yes, but what of that? She was just as nice and sweet and generous as the day is long. If she had something you needed, you could have it and welcome. One time she had a glass eye. She used to lend it out to Flora Ann Baxter, which had an innie. Well, Flora Ann was pretty large, and she was activated for about a size 14 eye, and that eye was about a size 7, so it didn't really fit. And so whenever Flora Ann would wink, it started whirling, and it started whirling and whirling. But whenever she got excited, that thing would start whirling really fast. It started going from blue and then yeller and then blue and then yeller and blue and yeller, and goodness, the oldest man in the world couldn't keep up with the expression on that side of her face then. Flora Ann Baxter married a Hoggadorn, I recall. I reckon that gives you the kind of blood she was. That old Southern blood. Ain't no better blood than the Hoggadorn blood. I reckon anybody will tell you that, eh?
Oh, no, I reckon not. Can we get back to the ram, please?
Sally Hoggadorn married a missionary, and they went off to spread the good news to the cannibals on one of them way off islands around the world summers. At him too, which was unusual. You see, it wasn't the customary to eat the missionary, but only the family. And when they had seen what they had done, they was dreadful sorry, and they had apologized about it, said 'twas an accident.
Well, wasn't it an accident?
An accident? Now, there's no such thing as an accident. Everything happens for a reason and is brought to us by a wiser power than us, and they all happen, and we don't know what they're for sometimes, but that's not none of our business. I mean, there ain't no such thing as an accident.
Well, what about what happened with Grandma?
Look at my Uncle Lim. That's all I gotta tell you. You just look at my Uncle Lim. One day he was standing up against the wall sick or drunk or something, and there was an Irishman about 3 stories high up on a ladder with a handful of bricks, and he fell. Hit a stranger square in the face and knocked him loose. Now, some people say that was an accident.
Well, wasn't it?
Why, no, it wasn't an accident. It was brought to us by a greater power than us, and it happened for a reason. If that man wasn't there, then that Irishman would have been dead sure. Now, some people say, "Sho, why didn't the dog save him?" Well, that's for a mighty good reason. You can't count on no dog to carry out a special providence like that. A dog would be smart enough to move out of the way. Now,
What about the ram?
Yeah, for real, like,
let me see.
Can we?
What was that dog's name? Oh, yes, Jasper. I remember now. Jasper was no mongrel. It was a wonderful dog. He was a composite.
A what?
A composite. Now, a composite is the type of dog that is made with all the good things in the dog breed, and the mongrel is all the riffraff that's left over. Well, Jasper, he was a wonderful dog, and he was a composite. My Uncle Lem, he got him from the Wheelers. I reckon you've heard of the Wheelers. Ain't no better blood south of the line than the Wheelers.
Now what about the ram?
yeah.
Yeah,
ram?
Please, can we please get back to the ram?
Now,
Like-
there's that one Wheeler. He worked in a carpet factory. One day, that machinery took a snatch at him, and he started whirling around that carpet like spinning and spinning, and you couldn't even see him went by. All you could hear is the whiz that he made as he went. Now, you know that somebody that went through that much trouble couldn't make it back home the same way he went. The widow, she was terrible sorry, and she tried to have a great ceremony for him, but she couldn't think of any ways. She tried to buy a tunnel, but there wasn't any for sale, so she boxed him up and put him on top of a hill, and it was a monument and economical too. You know, she wrote on it, "In loving memory of Wellington G. Wheeler, go thou and do likewise."
And so it is until this day. We are in ignorance. We do not know what happened to the grandfather or to the ram, or whether anything happened at all. Of course, it was all fun in the Silver Land, but it was rough country nonetheless. I remember when I got to Carson City, there was a saloon on every street, a gin mill on every corner, a fight in every doorway. There were 2 jails, some talk of building a school. It was no place for a Presbyterian. I did not remain one for very long either. Well, there was a grand time there when Buck Fanshawe died. Buck Fanshawe was a representative citizen. He had killed his man, not in his own quarrel, I admit, but because of entering a fray where someone was unfairly beset by numbers. He kept a sumptuous saloon and was a chief of the volunteer firemen. He kept a dashing helpmeet, a lovely girl whom he could have discarded without the formality of divorce. He was a very Warwick in politics, and so his demise attracted much attention. There was a coroner's inquest. Following the investigation, it was ruled that Buck Fanshawe, in the delirium of a wasting typhoid fever, had taken arsenic, stabbed himself in the throat, shot himself through the body 3 times, hanged himself from the chandelier, and then hurled himself out a 4-story window and broke his neck. There was a jury, of course. They deliberated. They were sad and tearful, but with an intelligence undimmed by their sorrow, they brought in a verdict of death by natural causes. What would we do without juries, eh? Well, at any rate, a committee was formed to see to Buck's funeral arrangements. A subcommittee of 1 was deputed. one Scotty Briggs, a close friend of Buck's. Now, Scotty was sent to see the minister, a fragile, gentle, puerile, young, recent graduate from a theological seminary in the East, and as yet unfamiliar with the ways of the mines. Now, I must say, by way of parenthesis, that Nevada in those days attracted the people of all nations. And as each new arrival brought the slang of his country or community to the Silverlands, Nevada became a nation that spoke only slang, and its slang was the most rich and varied on the earth. Phrases such as, "You bet," "No Irish need apply," "Oh no, I reckon not," fell from the lips instinctively, without thought, and often without specific reference to what had been said. And as a result, they contributed little or nothing to the conversation. Well, Scotty, in his usual costume of overalls, with footwear optional, arrived at the study of the young minister. Having been admitted to the presence, he pulled up a chair to the young minister's desk and sat down, for he was on weighty business. He snuffled a little, may have even sobbed, and said in lugubrious tones,
"Are you the duck that runs the gospel mill next door?"
"Am I the what?"
Why, you see we are in a bit of trouble. One of the boys has gone up, and now we don't know what to do, and we were wondering if you would get us out of it. That is, if I've got the rights to it, and you are the head clerk of the doxology works next door, right?
I am the spiritual advisor to the little community of believers whose premises adjoin these.
The which?
The shepherd in charge of the flock whose sanctuary is adjacent.
Ah. See why you put me up the flume now, boy. I don't know what you're talking about. Just ante and pass the buck.
What do I understand you to say?
I'd rather you got the bulge on me. Or maybe we both got the bulge somehow. You don't smoke me and I don't smoke you. You see, one of the boys has passed in his checks, and we want to give him a good send-off. And so now I was looking for somebody who can rouse a little wouts and send him through handsome.
My friend, your observations are wholly incomprehensible to me. At first I thought I understood, but I grope now. Would not it simplify matters if you would restrict yourself to categorical statements of fact, unencumbered by obstructing accumulations of metaphor and allegory?
I'll have to pass, I judge.
What do I understand you to say?
Why, you see, that last yarn of yours was just too much for me. I don't know what you're talking about. But you see, what we are looking for is a gospel sharp. See?
What?
A gospel sharp. A parson.
Oh, why did you not say so? I am a clergyman, a parson.
Well, look at you, boy. You see me blind. Now we're talking. Put it in there, boy. Oh, well, now that I know that you're a parson, why don't we... okay. One of the boys has gone up the flume.
Gone where?
Up the flume. Thrown up the sponge. You understand me?
Thrown up the sponge?
Yes. Kick the bucket?
Oh, has departed to that mysterious country from whose bourne no traveler returns.
Return? I reckon not. No, boy, that man is dead.
Yes, I understand.
Oh, do you? See, I thought you were going to get all tangled up again. But you see, that man is dead again,
Again, has he ever been dead before?
No. Do you reckon a man has got as many lives as a cat? No, sir. Oh, but Buck Fanshawe, I love that man. Oh, I never thought that I would see this day come. He done gone and died on me. And I wish I'd never have a better friend than Buck Fanshawe. They scooped him.
Scooped him?
Yes, death has. But, oh, he was one of the worst sons of a thief that ever was. And he gave it to them. He got on it bigger than the engine.
Got on it?
Mm-hmm.
Got on what?
On it, on the shoot, on the scoop, on the fight. You know what I'm talking about. And so, now we are looking for you to help us plant him.
Oh, to preach the funeral discourse. To assist at the obsequies.
Oh, obsequies is good. Yes. But you know, I loved Buck Fanshawe so much. And he was a nifty man. He was such a good man. So his funeral won't be anything less than that. It is not going to be no slouch. Buck Fanshawe was a man of peace. He fought for peace, and he did everything for peace, and he would not have it otherwise. No, sir. He weren't no Catholic, scarcely. But he fought for freedom. Yes, he did. On election 1968, I think. Anyways, Buck Fanshawe was a wonderful man.
Well, had the deceased any religious convictions?
Ooh. I'm afraid you stumped me again, partner.
Well, that is to say, did he, or rather had he, any affiliation with an organization sequestered from secular concerns and devoted to self-sacrifice in the interests of morality?
All but nine. Could you put it up the other alley, partner?
How? Begin again?
Yes, that's it.
Well, was he a good man? And,
That's it! Don't you put another chip in till I take a look at my hand. Was he a good man? Was Buck Fanshawe a good man? There is no better word for it. He was the best man. And he was such a great loss to this town. And so, could you mind putting something in there? In for the boys when you talking about his plan? But you know one thing that he never did? He never shook his mother.
he never shook his mother?
No, anybody would tell you so.
But why should he shake her?
I don't know, but some people does.
Well, not people of any repute.
But some people, the average pretty so-so.
Why, in my opinion, any man who would offer physical violence to his own mother should be taken out in the street.
That's it. That's not what I was talking about. What I was getting to was that he was a kind man even to his mother. He bought a house for her, and he brought her to the town lots, and he even provided her with lots of money. He was so kind to her. I remember even one time she came down with the smallpox, and I'd be darned if he didn't rustle up all night taking care of that lady. Excuse me for saying a little cuss word there. I apologize. You know what? You have been a gentleman to me. You are a white man. You are a square man. And I like you. And I'll lick any man that don't. I'll lick him till he don't know his last year's court from his own. Now put it in there.
Well, the obsequies were everything that the boys could want. The dirge-breathing brass bands, fire engines draped in black, crowds of people trailing along, witnessed by crowds more standing on rooftops and along sidewalks. In later years, the splendor of any spectacle in the city was measured against Buck Fanshaw's funeral. Of course, Scotty Briggs, being a pallbearer and chief mourner, played an important role in the funeral. And as the last breath of the last word of the final prayer for the dead man's soul ascended skyward, you could have heard Scotty, in a low voice, but with feeling, say,
Amen. No Irish need apply.
And so it was. In those days, I collected my stories and sent them off to the newspaper. Virginia City, San Francisco Chronicle. Some of them even made it back east. There was a piece about the jumping frog of Calaveras County. It became very famous in New York, although I remained obscure. I did, however, as I started to tour and give lectures, develop a dislike for certain members of my profession. And it caused me to violate one of the commandments. I abjure you, young people, not to follow my suit. I make it a rule always to follow all of the commandments. And most of the commandments, I follow some of the, well, I have not killed anyone. Lately. But at any rate, I leave lying alone whenever possible. Young people, you must be very careful about lying. Otherwise, you'll almost surely be caught. If you always tell the truth, you don't have to remember what you said. So I never lie unless I believe it is the will of God, or in self-defense. I will give you an example. Once in those early days when I was making speeches in the Silverland, reading from my work, I was accosted one day by a nervous, dapper, pert young woman who pounded on my hotel room door and announced that she was connected with the Daily Thunderstorm. Well, you see, I'd had some unfortunate experiences with these unpredictable creatures. They ask you all manner of questions, and they take the answers home and improve upon you. You can go over the printed result with a divining rod and not find a trace of yourself in there anywhere. So I had in mind to let her in and then throw her through the window. But she sat down in the best chair before I could put my plan into action. My powers were a little bit under a cloud that morning, so I resolved to confuse her. As soon as I sat down, she started in on me.
You know it's custom to interview any man who's become...
Indeed, I had not heard of it. What do you do it with?
Well, that's disheartening, but normally it consists of an interviewer asking questions to the interviewed and them answering them. Will you let me ask you certain questions of your salient past?
Oh, well, I have a very poor memory. That is to say, it is a most irregular memory. There are times it goes at a gallop, and other times it's as much as 2 weeks passing a given point. It's a great grief to me and to my family.
Oh, no problem. So you'll try the best you can.
Oh, I will. I'll put my whole mind to it.
Okay, ready to begin?
Ready.
How old are you?
19. In June.
Really? I would have taken you to be much older.
Huh? Well, thank you very much.
Where were you born?
Where was I born? In Missouri.
When did you begin to write?
In 1835.
How could you only be 19 now? You wrote in 1835.
I don't know. It does strike you sort of curious somehow, doesn't it?
It does indeed. Who is the most remarkable man you've ever met?
Oh, that would be Benjamin Franklin.
Excuse me, but if you're only 19, you could have never met Benjamin Franklin.
Now see here, young lady, if you know more about me than I do, what did you ask the question for?
Well, it was only a suggestion, nothing more. How did you happen to meet Benjamin Franklin?
I was at his funeral and he asked me to make less noise.
But good heavens, if you were at his funeral, how would he ask you to make less noise?
Oh, Franklin was always a very particular man that way.
Still, I do not understand. If he was dead, how could it be asked you to stop making noise?
I didn't say he was dead.
But wasn't he?
Some said he was, yes. Some said he wasn't.
What do you think?
Oh, I had no opinion on the matter. I was only a guest, not family. It was none of my affairs.
Did you how? Never mind that. We're never gonna get that. When was the date of your birth?
It is in April of 1835.
Okay. Impossible if you're only 19 now. And, have you or had you any brothers or sisters?
Oh, I think so, yes. But I don't remember.
Well, that's the most extraordinary statement I've ever heard.
Oh, thank you very much.
Well, whose picture is this up on the bureau?
Oh,
Is that
yes,
brother of yours?
there was a brother, now that you mind me of it. Yes, of course. William, Bill, we call him.
Why
Poor old Bill.
is he dead?
Dead? Well, there was always a great mystery about that. We never knew for sure.
So he disappeared.
Well, he disappeared in a sort of a general way, yes. We buried him.
Buried him. Buried him. Without knowing if he was dead or not.
Oh, no, he was dead enough, all right. He was always pretty dead.
I must confess I don't understand. If you buried him and you knew that he was
we
dead.
only thought he was dead.
Oh, I see. He came to life again.
Oh, I bet he didn't.
Well, I've never heard anything like this. Somebody was dead. Somebody was buried. Now where's the mystery?
There. You have put your finger right upon it. You see, we were twins, the defunct and I, and one day, at the age of 2 months, while we was being bathed in a tub, we got mixed up, and one of us was drowned, and we never knew which. Some said it was Bill. Some said it was me.
Well, what do you think?
I'd give whole worlds to know that's why this solemn and awful mystery has been like a cloud over my entire existence. But there is one very strange fact which I have never imparted to another living creature, and which I will impart to you now in strictest confidence. One of those children had a curious mark, a large mole on the back of his left hand. That was the child that was drowned, and that child was me.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that was the end of the interview. The young lady left abruptly, and I was sad to see her go because she had been a pleasant entertainment. I saw the results of her work that evening on a sidebar of the local daily. It said, "Deranged old man, loose at local hotel." Now, I suppose that was as accurate as it could get. Oh dear. I see the time for closing is at hand. My feet are tired and you are tired. If you will indulge me just one more moment, I am reminded at this time of a story, not from the Silverland, but from Dana's book 2 years before the mast. You may have read it. About the skipper of the little sailing sloop that plies the near waters, the inland sea, up in New England. And every time he was a few miles out on one of his runs in the kitchen and dried apple trade, If he saw another ship, he would spring up to the riggings and grab the speaking trumpet and sing out, "Ship ahoy! What ship, and whence, and whither?" Of course, he did it just to exercise his own small importance. One day, while he was out a short time, up over the horizon came a majestic Dutch East Indiaman with clouds and clouds of canvas, her decks and yards aswarm with sailors of every nationality. Loaded to the plimsoll line she was with cargoes of goodness knows what, but over the breeze there came the scent of adventure, of spices, and far-off places. And the little skipper jumped to the rig and he sings out, "Ship ahoy! What ship are you, and whence, and whither?" And the answer came back from the speaking trumpet in a great bass voice from somewhere on that canvas-clouded quarterdeck. "The Begum of Bengal, 183 days out from Canton, with the riches of the Orient, bound for your great port harbor, New York. And what ship you?" Well, it nearly crushed that creature's small vanity flat. He could only squeak back an answer and say, "Oh, we're only the Marianne, a couple hours out from Kittery Point with nothing in particular." And so it is with me, you see. During 23 hours of the day, I am only the Marianne. 73 years out with a cargo of nothing in particular. But during that 1 hour, when I might come before you and share the stories and smile at your most approbacious laughter and bask in your very kind attentions, then for that hour, I am the Begum of Bengal. 73 years out, laden with a cargo of fond memories and warm friendships. Homeward bound. Good night, all. Good night. Don't forget, you have a story. Don't forget to tell it to someone very soon.